All right. So, welcome to the Tales from the Trenches Tuesday. Today, I am so honored to have my friend and colleague, Barbara Crook, with me. Is a writer, a mental health advocate, and philanthropist in Ottawa. Barbara and her husband, Dan Greenberg, support their charitable endeavors through their family foundation, the Danbe Foundation. Dan and I believe that the true measure of a society is how it takes care of its most vulnerable members, she says. Barbara and Dan donate to many causes, including cancer coaching, research, and clinical trials. But Barbara's special interest is in mental health. She's worked on campaigns for the Royal Ottawa Mental Health Centre and the Queensway Carleton Hospital's Hopes Rising campaign. Her main volunteer roles these days are with the Stratford Festival, where she serves on the board of directors in the Canadian Jewish Federation's Coast to Coast Partnership. She's been recognized for her outstanding contributions to the community with the Order of Ottawa in 2014 and the Meritorious Service Medal presented by Governor Julie Payette to Dan and Barbara in 2018. In her spare time, Barbara enjoys travel, fly fishing, baking, singing in the Temple Israel Choir, studying Hebrew, playing guitar, and spending time with her special kitty cat, Sparrow. That being said, I've known Barbara for about 20 years. I don't think she's ever had any spare time. Barbara is someone who's just a volunteer extraordinaire. I've never heard you say no to anything. So people are just very lucky to have you on board. Barbara, I've been talking so often as of late to a bunch of my colleagues who are the professional fundraisers, and I thought it would be a really neat idea to kind of look at the other side of the equation. So one of the questions I always ask fundraisers is, tell me about the best canvas you were on. I'd love to ask from a donor's perspective. Tell me about the best canvas you had.
I think there's a few, but the common denominator in a good canvas for us, is people having done their research to get a bit of a sense of who we are and what we're interested in, and making it personal. So one organization, we had committed a certain amount of money, but had not specified where it would go. And they just went and did some research, and it was $1 million donation. It was a substantial donation, but we decided to break it up into 5 different parcels, and they went out of their way to give us options for each of those parcels and find something that would really resonate with us. And it was a medical. It was the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation, and not only did they give us options for our donation, but they made an effort. They made a point of giving us the opportunity to meet the researchers, to meet the doctors, to visit all of the places, so that it wasn't just writing a check. It was being there. It was being part of the decision and part of making things happen. So I think that's something really, really special.
And presumably you had some sort of a long-standing relationship with the folks at the Regional Cancer Foundation. This wasn't their first kick at the can with the Danbe Foundation, right?
Actually, no, it was quite early on, because it was 2008 or 2009 when we made a big gift to build the new Irving Greenberg Family Cancer Center at the Queensway Carleton. And part of that gift was $1 million to the Cancer Foundation. So we had some relationship with them, but this was actually very early on in the relationship. So their instincts were really quite wonderful. And, you talk about generosity from a donor side, but the generosity from the organization side was really something.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, so I want to contrast that with, I'm sure you've just had some gong shows of presentations that have either been in person or folks have sent you. So if you could tell me about one of the worst canvases, and we don't need to mention names and embarrass anyone, but no. I'm just looking at more of what was it that made it so bad?
So I had a very good relationship with an institution, and they changed professionals. But we had decided through our foundation that we would earmark a certain amount of money for this organization. It was a substantial gift, and I was very specific about the really 2 areas that I wanted to give. And we arranged for them to come to Ottawa in the days before everything was Zoom. They came to Ottawa and gave a presentation about three completely different areas that had absolutely nothing to do with what we had asked for. And we're
Oh
all
my.
sitting there sort of staring at each other. And I think we may have even been rude and texting each other saying, what is going on? And they had done some research. The areas were something that I had some peripheral connection to, but we could not have been more specific about this is where we want the money to go. And as a result, they didn't get a cent.
Wow. Wow. And so did you give them that feedback, so when they turned around and, they didn't get a gift, did you communicate to them why they didn't get the gift?
I think we had the late Wayne Hussey, who was our wonderful professional for years and years. I think Wayne would have done that.
Right.
And they didn't try to come back, and
Really?
um, it was very tone deaf. We also had one incident where the person didn't like person representing an organization didn't think the gift was big enough, and harassed one of our Danby advisors um, every time she saw him in the community,
Ouch.
including an overseas flight.
Oh my goodness.
I couldn't make this up. So,
Wow.
obviously there are times that you want a bigger gift, but
Right.
I think the other thing that is important is, from a fundraising point of view, is, and I think the good ones understand this, is just because there's high net worth or the person has a history of giving, we have to remember that there is a balance, and some causes are going to have higher priority, or if you're dealing with um, unlimited funds where you pay out a certain amount every year, there are
Right.
gifts that there's sometimes not enough money for a long-term gift at that time.
Right. So that kind of is a nice segue into the next topic. So I'm a strong advocate of the book The Art of Giving by Charles Bronfman and Jeffrey Solomon. So in it, Bronfman always says that pick something that you really want to change and that you're passionate about, and give a good chunk of change to that. You still have to be the good corporate citizen, and he's thinking of more of the transactional types of things where you've been giving the same $5,000 or $10,000 every year. It really doesn't change your life. You really don't really even that care that deeply about that organization, but you've been doing it for so long. And he says focus on the things that you really care about, and you can always change those every so often. So do you guys as a group change your priorities, what your funding priority is, or is it pretty much on a reactive side and see what kind of comes across the table?
Your timing is perfect because for many years it was reactive, not completely, but people asked, and they were all good causes. And over the last few years, we've really tried to focus on saying, well, wait a minute, there will always be good causes, but what do we want to do to change the world? And so. And we weren't that far off. So a big chunk of our giving is for Jewish causes, specifically, well, obviously the Federation's annual campaign, but also things that contribute to Jewish continuity. So even though we don't have kids, for example, we're very big supporters of Jewish day schools.
Right.
Healthcare in general. So I think if we had to say Dan's passion in healthcare would be cancer. Mine would be mental health. So we've been able to give some very, in case of the Royal campaign and the Queensway Carleton Hopes Rising, ours was the first major gift, and I also did a lot of advocacy in that area. So that's something that gave me great satisfaction, because I've also spoken about erasing stigma.
Mm-hmm.
We do some arts funding, that's important. But Dan, in the last year or so, Dan has said, wait a minute, I really think that a very large proportion of our giving should be going to environmental causes, because talk about changing the world. And even though
Mm-hmm.
we don't have kids, we want future generations to be able to breathe the air and
Sure.
drink the water. So we're saying no to more things so that we can say yes to some of those priorities. We
And I think that
also, during COVID, we set aside a specific fund for COVID-related emergencies or projects that needs, because
Right.
we realized that I learned from another foundation in dealing with a natural disaster that there's always short, medium, and long-term needs
Right.
for something like that. So we still actually have money in that fund, because there are still social issues, causes that are very much their ability to help people is very much been affected by COVID. So that
Right.
was something that we're really glad we did.
You and Dan are certainly inspirational, and we're so very lucky to have you in the community. So
Thank you.
Barbara, it's been an absolute pleasure. Every time I chat with you, I always learn something. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.